Citlali is a special character for many players, perhaps a fan favorite in Natlan's story, and yet she bears the curse of being a Cryo character, an element famous for its less than stellar character cast. Obviously, this has caused confusion in many for whether to pull for her or not, so I am here to save the day. I will help you decide by telling you Citlali's biggest pros and cons. When talking about Citlali, the first thing to mention is automatically the fact that she is going to try her best to make Melt a viable archetype again. Yep, you heard it, Melt. And it's not reverse Melt either, like Riesli. No, it's forward Melt with Pyro carries. Now, I will say I am a little disappointed that she's not a Melt DPS herself, but for all it's worth, Citlali does want to play in Melt teams, and it makes them a viable alternative to Vaporize teams. This is because of Citlali's Ascension 1 passive, that reduces the enemy's Pyro resistance when causing a Melt reaction, or their Hydro resistance when causing a Freeze reaction. Now, like I already stated, this does mean that Cryo DPSs do not get a single buff out of Citlali, which is quite unfortunate since Riesli is a really cool character, and he's getting the short end of the stick yet again. But the fact that Citlali is trying to make Melt viable at all shows that Hoyo has not quite forgotten about this reaction, despite the fact that they've given it such little attention. It also makes it that anyone who wanted to play Melt teams is now able to, which is very nice. Another neat bonus is the fact that Citlali gives defensive utility to the team, because her skill will give you a shield. The shield is actually pretty useful, because shields in this game will give you interruption resistance. And if there's anything that our current cast of Pyro DPSs hate, it's being interrupted, especially Linny. Even Arlecchino and Hu Tao to an extent would like a shield, because with them, they are playing with their HP bar as if it's some kind of baseball bat. By which I mean, Arlecchino is literally unable to heal and Hu Tao tries to be as low as possible, even though in her double Hydra team she doesn't do that anymore. So having defensive utility when trying to buff a Pyro carry is actually pretty important, and thankfully, Citlali does have that. But that's not where it ends for Citlali, because her Ascension 1 is not the only way she has to buff. Because yet again, we are getting a Natlan support, and you know what that means, 4-piece Cinder City is back to the rescue. And I've already said this in my Mavuika pros and cons, but Cinder City is a genuinely incredible set. Its 2-piece gives you energy, which is something that every single support wants to build for. Citlali is one of those because she needs to use her burst to generate more Night Soul points to enhance her skill. And thus, the energy you get from the 2-piece is actually really good, especially since Natlan has done a really good job at keeping burst cost low, with hers sitting at a very chill 60. So even if you get only one Night Soul burst off in your team, which on average you should be getting like 1.5, that is still 10% of her burst just given for free. And if you decide to pair her up with another Natlan character, especially Shalonen, she's just gonna get even more energy. But obviously when talking about Cinder City, the real star of the show is not the energy. Rather, it's the sheer amount of damage bonus it provides. Shalonen has 36% res shred and 40% damage bonus through Cinder, which already made her a contender for best character in the game. Citlali now has 20% res shred, although it is only on 2 specific elements, and can also run Cinder, which means the amount of damage buffing she can do is honestly quite ridiculous. And why is energy important? Well, outside of the fact that not only does her burst give her more Night Soul points, it also actually has pretty decent nuke damage. Because yeah, I like it when my defensive utility characters are able to pack a punch. Not because it's good usually, but because it's funny. Think about Kirara's 1200% attack multiplier. That's funny, right? Well, Citlali actually gives herself some EM multipliers on her skills. I don't really care about the one on the skill, but the one on the burst is really funny, because she just gives herself 1200% EM scaling. Do you want to know how much 1200% EM scaling is? For reference, that is Nahida's C6 3 times! You essentially get 3 Nahida C6s, and guess what? Citlali can melt this, so you will not be surprised to see your Citlali doing more than 100,000 damage on her burst, which is really funny to see from a support. It's not really that relevant in most content, but it will be able to put a significant dent in the enemy's HP when you are fighting in multi-wave, and I think that is an incredibly unique advantage for a character to have, especially in the defensive role. But I think one of Citlali's biggest advantages is the fact that she makes Melt a genuine option for pyro carries. And you want to know what pyro carries were running before? Vaporize. You want to know which character is used in Vaporize? Furina. And I don't know about you, but I doubt I have to tell you why Furina is a good character. So, because Melt is now a genuine alternative to Vaporize that doesn't suck, it means that you're able to just play Melt with your Arlecchino or your Mavuika, which frees up your Furina for another team. And this is really important, because Furina is an incredibly universal character. Did you want to play Navi on the other side? Well, you can use the Furina now. Oh, you wanted to play Nuvolette on the other side? Your Furina is free. Xiao? Same thing. Furina's just used with so many characters, so making her less needed is really strong. Even if your Pyro DPS is using Yelan, Yelan is a good character as well, so getting Citlali will make your Pyro carries a lot more flexible. But obviously, as a Cryo character, Citlali definitely has her cons, and the first of which is already one that is actually pretty damning, which is her Cryo application. For a character whose goal it is to try and make Pyro DPS's play Melt, she does a kinda bad job at applying Cryo. This is because Forward, Melt, and Vaporize consume more of an element than their reverse counterparts. So for the people who have no idea what any of that means, essentially, Cryo on Pyro is easier to maintain than Pyro on Cryo. And because Citlali's Cryo application is not as good as it should be, she is actually unironically not able to keep Cryo up in a Mavuika carry team. However, there is a solution to this. Because Citlali is a Natlane character who has Night Soul mechanics, it means that you are able to use Kazuha instead of Shallonen, which will increase your Cryo application. This should hopefully be enough to allow for 100% Cryo uptime on the enemy, which would also translate to 100% Melt uptime. The next bad thing about Citlali is that her shields are actually not that strong. At level 10 with 1000 Elemental Mastery, your shield should be about 13,000 HP, which if you look at your character's HP, usually it should be sitting around the 16 to 18,000 range, with some even reaching as far as 20,000, unless you're an HP scaling character, in which case things are even more inflated. If you compare that to a Zhongli with 40,000 HP, that does look like Citlali's shield is stronger. However, Zhongli has a Geo Shield, the big advantage here being the fact that Geo Shields have 150% damage absorption against all elements, whereas Citlali's shield only has a 250% damage absorption against Cryo, so it is weaker than a Zhongli. This means that Citlali's shield is not made to face tank enemy hits. It's definitely meant to be used a lot more smartly, aka as a source of interruption resistance when it really matters. For example, when you are charging a Lini charge shot. This means putting Citlali in your team will be nowhere near as brain dead as a Zhongli. This is especially true if you choose to use a damaged Citlali. And then finally, the freeze part of her Ascension 1 is kinda useless. Now, I know that this is a nitpick, but really? You're gonna reduce Hydro Resonance when you're playing Freeze? The only Hydro carry I can see playing Freeze is Nuvolette, and the only reason that you'd be playing Freeze on him is because you're running Charlotte to generate fanfare, which kinda reduces the point of having Citlali in there anyway. At that point, you really should just be using Shalonen. Now, if you don't have Shalonen, Citlali will be a pretty decent alternative because she is able to reduce Hydro resistance just like Shalonen, and she also has Cinder City, which means that her buffing isn't actually that far off from Shalonen. But even then, you'll be generating less fanfare because Citlali can't heal. But like I said, this is kind of a nitpick. So, will you be pulling for Citlali? I know I will, because she was one of my favorite characters during the Natlan Archon quest. Mavuika and Citlali were my favorite Natlan characters, so the fact that 5.3 has both of them does kinda hurt the wallet. Let me know in the comments below if you're going to be pulling for Citlali or not, and if you are, tell me how far you're willing to go. While you're down there, might as well subscribe and like the video. If you at any point disagreed with what I said, be sure to join my Discord or message me on Twitter to try and get into a discussion with me. You could comment about it, but then I have a way lower chance of seeing it. But that'll be all from me. Peace.